Last weekend, I attended the Young Women's Leadership Summit in Grapevine, Texas. It was hosted by Turning Point USA. And it really made me think about what is the role of women in the conservative movement? How has that changed over time? And where are we heading? I think it's time to spill some sweet tea. Welcome back to the Sweet Tea series. My name is Ariana Guajardo. I'm so glad you guys are joining me today. Today I don't have a guest with me, but I do have lots of speeches that we're going to be reacting to, some stuff that I wanted to bring back as we're talking about where young conservative women are today and how that's changed. So the Young Women's Leadership Summit, this was actually their 10th anniversary. It's about 2,500 young ladies who were there. And I was actually surprised by the age range. So, I'm 25, young professional, but there were actually some homeschool high schoolers who were there. I think some public school high schoolers as well, all the way to other young professionals who were in their, like later 20s, early 30s. And it was really great being able to see all of these women come together as we're trying to examine what does conservatism look like for women now. So a lot of the conference was really focusing on culture, and a lot of it had to do with motherhood. So I think that that's a big change in what we've seen in the past, or what I've seen at least during a lot of conservative conferences, which usually focus on, the politics and policy side. But a lot of this was coming back to cultural issues. So things about like, what does it mean to be a woman, the women's sports kind of stuff. Again, women who are choosing to stay home, what that means for them, for their families, and how ultimately that shapes society. So one of the first speeches that I really enjoyed was someone named Dana Loesch. So younger women, I'm not sure if you've heard of her before. She really got big through radio and through her Second Amendment activism. A few years ago, while I was in college, we had hosted her through Young Conservatives of Texas and gave a great speech back then. And this time, one of the reasons I really appreciated her there, she was kind of going through the history of the Second Amendment and what that's meant for women, and being able to have a role in defending themselves and defending their families. So let's kind of take a listen to that together.
I'm going to start with the Second Amendment. I wrote in my first book, women had the right to bear arms before we had the vote. We have long been able to defend ourselves and defend our family. Women, I'm going to tell you, do you know the first female-led military operation in this country was led by Harriet Tubman?
Okay, I'm pausing right there because I actually didn't know that going in. So this was some news for me and actually some pretty incredible stuff.
She raided a ferry with Union soldiers under the command of Colonel William Montgomery and freed 700 slaves. And it was successful. So that's women's history with firearms. Annie Oakley. Annie Oakley is one of my favorite people in American history.
Also have to second that. Love her.
For two reasons. Number one, she wasn't just a great shot, Little Sure Shot, as she was nicknamed. She was feminine to the hilt in the Victorian era. She was going to wear the full skirt, the full dress, and she took umbrage with people that suggested that because she liked to compete in shooting, that she was somehow less of a woman or less feminine. She always said famously that she wanted women to be able to handle guns just as naturally as they handle their babies.
So one of the things that I loved about the rest of her speech is Dana Loesch is someone who, for a part of her career, for about, I think she said about like maybe 10 to 20 years, she stepped back from what she was doing to focus on her family. But while she was doing that, she wasn't just, doing like just being in the home. She got pretty involved in the Tea Party during that time as well, and was talking about the way that she would bring her kids to that, and they kind of got raised within that movement. And so I think the way that the left has, depicted this idea of being a stay-at-home wife or is just someone locked in the kitchen all day long. But really what some of the women here who've taken time away from just corporate America to raise their families have also been able to cultivate their families and include education within that, and activism and community involvement. And so I really appreciated Dana Loesch sharing that part of her journey, in addition to giving us historical context around the ways that women have traditionally participated within our society. Another quick thing, there's something that happened at the event was multiple times we heard from Charlie Kirk and his wife, Erika. So one of the things that, again, they were continuing to speak about at this event was a lot about motherhood and the way that marriage looks now and how there's tension right now between younger women and young men. And is that surprising at all? No. Has that ever been any different at any point in time? Not really. Since the fall, there has always been this tension between young men and young women. And one of the things that Charlie was asking about is he had everyone raise their hand, like raise your hand if you feel like there's the dating pool out there is not really good right now for women. And every single hand shot up. I mean, I'm out of the dating world, but I can definitely agree that that's what it looks like right now. And he was asking, are you guys surprised to know that whenever I ask this to young men, they feel exactly the same way? Again, I'm not surprised by that at all because, again, from the fall, there's been this tension between men and women. And what we have to do now is just, I think, be able to expect that and have a lot of grace where the other sex is concerned. So with that, I want to show one of the clips from him and his wife speaking together. And one of the things that they were talking about is this tension that happens whenever we have a lot of young women right now who are highly motivated, they're very career oriented, and they don't feel like the men around them are living up to the same standards that they're setting. So let's dive into that, and then I'll pause it again along the way.
What advice would you give to young ladies where they are much more motivated than their boyfriend? How many of you have this problem? Raise your hand.
Ooh, that's tough.
I think it's a big problem.
Yeah.
Now, I think that you should both be motivated, but if the woman is much more motivated than the man, would you agree that ends up causing structural issues?
Right, because the man then ends up leaving his pants on the ground and the woman has to put them on. And so then she becomes the breadwinner because then the husband's just chill and is like, I'm fine with, not going any further than the level that I'm at, while the woman is aspiring to be more and more and more. So then you become uneven and unequally yoked in your relationship or marriage. And that's just a recipe for
So that one line there, I remember everyone laughed whenever she said the put on the pants line. But it is interesting that I think they're pointing out something that a lot of women are feeling right now. And that moves us into some of the pop culture stuff. So there's a lot of online discourse right now about Sabrina Carpenter's new song, Man-Child. There's been people on the right saying that it's anti-man. A lot of people aren't happy with it. I mean, I kind of have to defend Sabrina here. I think it's really funny. And her song, Man-Child, is the lines are like basically, man-child, why you always come running for me, saying that they're these men who aren't really grown up, who are immature, and they just find her. But she's being ironic, of course. She's continuing to choose that. And I think that's what's happening right now. So if we're complaining, like if women are complaining about I don't know what the plural of man-child is. It men, children, children? I don't know. But if we're complaining about that kind of mentality that exists right now, and yet we continue to, allow it and continue to participate in it. And like the women who are dating the men who are acting this way, you are kind of complicit in that kind of behavior. And so I do at least appreciate that we're at least speaking about, this is an issue. And I think I'm hoping that women don't just decide like, well, there might not be much else out there because all of them are behaving this way, and just settle. Because I really think that one of the things that women have a natural gift for is whenever you set a standard, and it can't just be one. I think multiple women have to set a certain standard, and then men are willing to then live up to it. One other caveat that I had from the comments though with Erika was, I think this mentality of requiring that or thinking that the perfect world is where the man is a breadwinner. I don't think that's always necessarily the most conservative. And when we think about conservatism, I don't want to limit the idea of conservatism to this like dream world that lived or existed at some point between the 50s and 60s, because that's our society goes back way before then. And really, I think that conservatism is at its root focused on the family and the family unit, and both parents participating within that to then pass that along to the next generation. And in some instances, that does mean that the way that you divide and conquer is men are able to go out to work, and then women are both managing the finance of the home and the upbringing and education of the children. But that's still a partnership where you have to respect that both parties are going to be able to do their job well. But again, that's such a short point in history where that was the case. I mean, if you think back to way closer to the beginning of time, the hunter-gatherer, that's still a division of different types of labor. Before the Industrial Revolution, where you had the economy of the home or farm societies, either you were both working on the farm. Again, the work you do on the farm might differ, or in an economy where you had businesses out of your home, if there was tasks that were more required more nimble work, a woman might work on that. But again, these are people who are working towards their strong suits and contributing together to make a family flourish. So that's my one critique of this breadwinner mentality, or who has to do that. But I do think that what they are pointing out correctly is that the world that we live in right now is definitely not promoting that either. The world that we're living in now, a lot of women have been encouraged, and millennials are the ones suffering from this most, encouraged to just go into the workforce, don't worry about the other stuff, you can figure that out later. And then ultimately a lot of them are saying that they're unhappy. And because they focused only on their careers. In another speech that I don't have pulled up right now, Jackie Deason, and she and her husband, Doug Deason, have been supporters of the foundation, especially within our criminal justice work. But one of the things that she was one of the speakers, and one of the things that she was talking about was she really did prioritize her career for a long time. And it wasn't until a little bit like later into it in her life where she realized like she loves the work she does. She loves it. But her job will never love her back. And for me, it was such a moving moment. But I don't want us to end up in a world where, as conservatives, we're locking people and women into boxes in the same way that the left had done that. And that brings me to the next video I wanted to show y'all. Brett Cooper. So Brett Cooper, you know her, we love her. She talked about this false dichotomy and the way that the right is starting to behave like the left. She starts out by talking about feminism, and that's where we're going to jump in.
Years and years of these pervasive, divisive attitudes left so many women disillusioned and lost, unhappy with their lives, unfulfilled by the empty promises of modern feminism in corporate America, especially when it came to millennial women, which I think we've all seen the polling. We know how they're doing. Those are the impacts that we're dealing with. But I really don't need to tell you all of that. I think that is something that has obviously been discussed a lot on this stage even. It is something we debate and talk about constantly. And there's a new layer of this that I think we're dealing with right now. Because in response to all of that, that is where the trad wife aesthetic and idea came to be so popular. And you might kind of cringe at that because I'm intentionally using the word aesthetic because that is how it started. It began with unique and aspirational and aesthetically pleasing content that offered women a positive glimpse into another world. A world that was slower and softer and arguably way more grounded and prioritized motherhood in a way that they had never seen prioritized in the media. And unsurprisingly, after years of having the alternative shoved down our throats relentlessly, being mocked for making choices like that, this more traditional, historical idea of womanhood and motherhood took off. And very quickly, understandably, the right kind of took this on as their own. Like this was the way, finally, that we could actively champion more traditional values and finally uplift women who chose to be mothers, who are the backbone of our society. And this is the way that we could celebrate happy and healthy marriages and homes. And that is objectively a good thing. But unfortunately, it did not stop there. Because now, when I go online, I often see something that is as polarizing and puritanical as what the left was doing years ago. It is now something that is fueled by anger and shame and resentment. Women who are mothers, who have children, and continue to work, women like Caroline Levitt, who I think we all can agree is incredible, get relentlessly ripped to shreds online. by people who I think would agree with most of us on policy and politics. Podcasters like my dear friend Allie Beth Stuckey, who I know you guys all adore. They call Allie Beth Stuckey secretly a feminist because she still has a vocation outside of the home, because she does such important work with her books and her podcast. Allie Beth, of all people. Young women online are mocked for not yet finding a husband, and possibly worst of all, women who are not able to have children are told that their life will forever lack meaning. Is that really the message that we want to be sending out to the world? Like, these are not exaggerations. These are posts that I see. These are emails that I receive about my life and others. These are posts that I get tagged in from you guys who see them and feel disillusioned.
So again, love Brett Cooper and the way that she breaks down this issue. We on the right, I think, need to caution ourselves right now to not become the worst parts of the left. And especially if we're talking about, we're in a society where not everyone knows what a woman is. We have people who are genuinely suffering from mental health crises. And if there's people out there who decide that they are in the wrong body because they don't fulfill a certain type of what you're putting forward, why are we making that even more limited? I don't think that that's going to be helpful for helping our society heal. And also within this conversations that were happening at these talks, again and again, people were trying to get the message across of, if you do not want to enter corporate America and spend your whole life there and you want to take time to raise a family, go for it. And also, if that means just taking a pause and continuing to work in other ways, I'm so glad that there were several women there who are also business owners, again, like probably like some of them like multi-million-dollar business owners, right? That they were able to just figure out what it was that worked for their family, and then being able to spend the kind of time with their kids that they wanted to. One of the speakers, though, mentioned that some of the most important conversations that we have and the most important things that we can do are the conversations that happen at the dinner table. And I completely agree with that. A lot of the values that I have were instilled within me because of the time that my parents spent with me. And for me, it was the dinner table. And then I didn't drive until I was 18, but it gave me a lot of time to spend in the car with my dad, just having conversations about what I thought and what he thought about the world. And those were really formative experiences for me. So something that I would hope to see at future events from them, and I'm glad that other organizations do this, are conversations about policy and politics, because I don't want women to also just be confined to the cultural conversations. And because I think that there's, especially if women are the ones who we want to be the main educators and we're pushing that as well, well, then we need to talk about the other subject areas. So whether that be like criminal justice policy, the border stuff, like you name it, a policy area, that's stuff that we all need to be contributing and that we all need to learn. And there's no limit to the amount that we can learn, and no matter what age you are. Right now, I've been realizing that I do not have the level of civics education that I should. I didn't have a good civics education from a really strong one in high school. I studied film in college, so there is definitely some stuff that's lacking. But working at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, I'm on a floor with mostly a lot of lawyers and all constitutional law. So I'm learning something new every single day. And I realized, again, there's stuff that I'm missing. So I decided to ask them to help make me a curriculum. So I'm saying this now, so I have to be held to it. I'm going to start reading Locke's second treatise. I bought it so I got it in the mail. So I'm going to start that. And again, if I don't report back, comment underneath the post on Instagram and see where I am on that. Please hold me accountable. But again, I think it's important that we learn about our history. Again, if we want to be the educators of our children, and we talk about why that's important, and that the left has let us down in these institutions that we've let them run, well, we got to pick up the pieces. So again, there's conferences as well that help with that because it's easier in community. So the Texas Public Policy Foundation's Texas Policy Summit happens every year in the spring. That's great. If you're an adult, I would highly encourage that one. If you're a college student, one that was really great for me was going through Young Conservatives of Texas, and both in the organization and their state conference. Again, it was about the policy areas, the political scene. And even if you're not, you're not in Texas, there's so many conservative organizations on college campuses and even in local communities. Join one of them. Start learning, because women who are wanting to, if we're talking about where we are now as a conservative movement and where women are within that, the younger women right now, especially before they're getting married, I think that what we're saying is, okay, I do want to prioritize a family now. I might still want to be able to figure out how I need to work, because one of the things that Charlie did mention was if women were to leave the workforce right now, I think it's like when men would have to have 56 weeks worth of wages in order to support a family. So that's more than a year. So we're still in this point of figuring out what does it look like to reclaim a culture where some women are wanting to spend more time with their families, even if that just means a few years out of that. Or what kind of ways does that, what kind of jobs could be included to where you have the flexibility to spend the amount of time with your family that you want to while also contributing. And if you don't and you feel called, like you're, for example, my mom's an optometrist, and for her, what that looked like was doing some part-time work and doing fill-in stuff so she could prioritize where my schooling was. And my dad, for some of that, actually stayed home. So every family is going to look different, but I think we're at that crossroads right now of trying to figure out, what do we want our society to look like? Because again, societies continue to change. We're not moving. The 1950s aren't something that we can just move back towards. And that's not original conservatism either. So I think right now we're figuring out, what is that going to look like in the future, and asking ourselves, what kind of communities do we want to build? And I think that the left is wrong to depict conservatives as people who want to just shove women in the kitchen, lock the key, never let them come out again. We don't want that. But every family is going to look different. The way that we're going to work is going to be different. And another thing that I think is going to happen is our social structures are going to change again. I've had this idea for a while that the reason our public schools got to where they were, I feel like everyone asks that question, like, how did we get to the point where these explicit, visually, like graphic, explicit materials are in our public school libraries, are in the children's sections of just community libraries? My thought is that whenever the left convinced women that they didn't need to worry about their families anymore, that they needed to just go find jobs and enter corporate America and lock themselves in that, we kind of left our social institutions to left-wingers who don't actually care about family. So there's this one line that one commentator I like, he always says that the left doesn't have children, but they have yours. And so I think whenever we're asking ourselves, and conservative women, I think what we're looking at the future of our societies is we're ready to step back into some of those social institutions. We know I've brought someone on the podcast before who decided that she needed to be on the board of her public library because she didn't want that kind of material being accessible to children. And I think the future of conservatism is women figuring out what social institutions have we left behind, and how can I pick those back up, and how can I bring my kids and my family along the way to learn about civics, to learn about our culture, and ultimately save America. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on the Sweet Tea series. Please follow me on Instagram. We're trying to grow that community. That's @SpillingSweetTea. And subscribe to the Texas Public Policy Foundation's YouTube channel. I'll see you next time.